Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Series A, Dhamma Talk number 54. In the last Dhamma Talk, we were discussing about the second noble truth, the noble truth of the origin of suffering or the cause of suffering. Buddha expounded in detail in his first sermon, the first sermon he delivered, Dhammacakkappavattana, turning of the wheel of Dhamma. So in here, what is the origin of suffering? And the origin of suffering is called craving. In English translation, but the original Pali word is called Tanha, craving or Tanha. So, what is this craving? This craving is bound up with pleasure, and also it takes delights here and there, and overall it craves on the sense pleasure. So first of all, this is craving. Craving, tanha, it's translated precisely as thirst. Okay, so thirst, hunger, craving. Those are the words that are translated. And this craving is bound up. So, in other words, it arises together with pleasure and lust, with pleasures and attachment. Okay, craving, pleasure, attachment, they arise together. In a sense, they are identical. Craving is the pleasure. Pleasure is the craving. That is the nature of craving. And also, this craving takes delights here and there. What it means is, this craving takes delights. In other words, it creates rebirth. Here and there means in different realms of existence. Of course, a human, we like to be reborn in a better existence, or rich, famous, intelligent human, or deva, or celestials, or Brahma, that kind of thing. Take delights in existence, in rebirth. And here, I like to give you one example, because we are always talking in a sense of relative sense. Okay, as a human, we wish or we like to be reborn as a human with the better status. Or some even say, I want to become a celestial Ram or Brahma, because you consider it that is better. So in those existence, in those realms, we want to, or we take delight in. But this story will tell you a different story. There was once two friends. They lived together, They grow up together, they try their best to be good. They do a lot of wholesome deeds. And then when the time came, they passed away. One passed away and he was reborn in a celestial realm. In other words, born as an angel. And the other one, even though he does all these good, wholesome deeds, right near the end of his lifespan, his mind was attached to the things, the family, the current existence. That attachment was too strong and become obsessed to it. And then he was reborn as a maggot. I think we all know maggot, especially Asian knows about it. In your toilet, they're not clean, and out of these all the repulsive thing we have discarded, from there grows a little maggot or insects, like hundreds and thousands of them, that kind of thing. And at that time, the one friend who became an angel because of the Deva eyes, with his power, he looked at, where's my friend? He remembers about his friend, where's my friend? He looked at it, because he's really enjoying his celestial status. He said, where's my friend? I should better look for it. He looked around, couldn't find anywhere in the Deva realm. He looked in the human, he couldn't find it. And then finally he zoomed in and found out his friend was reborn as a maggot. Oh gosh, I have to go down and save him. I don't know what happened to him. So he went down to there, a maggot he talked to, and he, with his celestial power, he reveals their past and things like that. And I'm in a Deva realm, I'm going to save you. Why don't you leave this world, and then you have a lot of good karma. You can be reborn in a Deva realm, as he calls. I will help you any way I can. And that little maggot, his friend as a human, he said, oh, why do I want to come to Deva realm? I'm really happy here. I have my family, okay, my wives, my children, and there's lots of food, and we are just rolling and happy. Okay. That is the answer. He doesn't care to become a celestial or angel in the celestial realm. He just lived in that poop pit hole with his family, with his children, with all the food that we have discarded. And he's just happy. That shows a being take delights here and there in whichever existed they were born, reborn, or rebirth took place. From our point of view, from a standard we put in a relative, oh, this is a suffering, oh, this is great, this is better. But once we were born into that existence, and we only know about that environment, and we are happy in that environment, we are attached to that environment, we are attached to that existence. We do not look at it as a suffering at all. That's what it means by craving. It takes delights here and there. That's what Buddhists mean. It is not that we want to be a better existence. Of course, based on where you are, you like to be, if you have intelligence, want to be in a higher, better state. But once you are rooted in a certain environment, you are just simply drifted and then attached to that existence, that life. So keep that in mind. Okay? On a relative term, we are talking with the intelligence, but once we are there, we just roll. It is very strong and powerful, this craving, this attachment. We are attached to any and every existence that we are born into. At that moment we are totally unaware. And we seems like in a deluded way, happy. So keep that in mind. And in here, take delights here and there. In general, we crave in the sense pleasure. Okay. In all the sense pleasure we crave. That's what craving is. We become attached to all the sense pleasure. So in here, you say the origin or the cause of suffering is craving, Dhamma. And the Buddha pointed out this one because this is the most obvious and the most immediate, factor that produces suffering. But it is not the only one. Okay? There's always a co-worker. First of all, craving produces suffering. And whenever there's a craving, there's another mental factor called ignorance or avijja, not knowing. That is also arises together. Whenever there's a craving or attachment or grasping, or in one word, lobha, whenever there's a lobha, there's moha, delusion or not knowing or ignorance. Those two mental factors arises together, inseparable. So actually, when the Buddha said, this craving is bound up with pleasure and lust and take delights here and there. What it means is it craves in the sense pleasure, and when we say take delights in here and there, we are looking at a totally deluded way, unknowingly. As we don't know about it, we crave for it. What it really means is, intellectually speaking, we crave to become a human. We crave to become a celestial being. We crave to become a Brahma. That kind of craving. So in other words, we have a view. We hold on to the view, a deity or miccha deity, the right view or the wrong view. And here we hold on with the wrong view. What it is, we crave to become a certain being and a certain existence. In other words, we believe in the eternalistic view, which means this I or self or soul is eternal, never-ending, indestructible. That is the view we hold on. That's a wrong view. That is ignorance. That is moha. Eternalistic view, here is a spirit or a soul. It is eternal. You walk yourself way upward to be better and better, and eventually you become with the universal truth or God, that kind of a thing. Or in some cases, you would like to become two kinds of Brahma. One is the material Brahma, in which they have the material form still there, and one is immaterial Brahma. There is no material, just simply consciousness. They like to become to it. And also, they are attached. They are attached to jhana. Jhana is a mental state in which it is the mind become very powerful. So powerful, it seems like that is the universe by itself. You become attached to it. So in other words, you are attached to the eternalistic view, attached to become a better existence, attached to become one with the universal truth, attached to become a Brahma of any kind, attached to be in a total state of jhana. And these are called attached to the eternalistic view. And also some are attached to the annihilistic view, which means this is the only life. We just come out of nowhere without any cause. We live, and when we die, there's nothing left, gone, finished. One life, one existence. That means nothing after death. Also, people are attached to that view. Regardless how much they are attached to that, nothing exists after that, but the way they live their life is with full of attachment, with enjoying the fullest of the pleasure. And at the same time, they are attached to this present, current existence. Still, you are attached. Even though you believe there's nothing after that, you still live with that attachment, you still live with that craving. So regardless, as long as there's a craving, there's a rebirth. So the point here is made is suffering is the effect, craving is the cause. But not only craving, you become attached, you crave, one with the attachment to the sense pleasure, and also you crave with the wrong view, deity. Okay? Tanha and deity. Tanha is craving, attachment, grasping, or deity is the view. Sometimes you view it with the wrong view, you are attached to this existence. So those are the two main, but there are more of course, but these two mains should be understood, because whenever there's a craving, there is this moha, or the wrong view. In other words, craving is a lobha. Okay, wrong view is a moha. Those two always exist. So one should understand that way. So with that, we live. With that craving, we grasp onto things, we get attached onto things, and then there's a rebirth. And as long as there's a rebirth, a whole lot of sufferings follow. Rebirth itself is a suffering, and we have talked about the First Noble Truth. So you know what suffering, dukkha, means. And the cause of suffering is this tanha and deity, craving and clinging to the wrong view. So now, the Buddha has opened it up, the origin of life, the origin of rebirth, the origin of existence, or the origin of suffering is craving. And then the Buddha further went on to explain so that we can understand better, so that we can understand and practice more like a guide towards the walking model. Okay? Intellectual explanation of a walking model, how it works. And here the Buddha said, here in this craving, okay, it takes delights and pleasure. Okay. It arises, the craving arises in the delightful and pleasurable things. And when it arises. When it's settled, it's settled. That is the closest translation in English. What it means is now craving. What is this craving? How does this craving come to be? How does this craving operate? That's what the Buddha showed us. And first of all is, it is with delightful things. Whenever there's a delightful things and pleasurable things, this craving will come. So first and foremost, what are the delightful things and what are the pleasurable things? We need to know. Because without these delightful things and pleasurable things, craving cannot arise. Because of these things, craving arises. So in here the Buddha said, I is a delightful things or pleasurable thing. Your eye. And it goes on to say, ear is a delightful thing, pleasurable thing. Nose is a delightful thing, pleasurable thing. Tongue, taste bud is a delightful thing, pleasurable thing. The body is the delightful thing, pleasurable thing. And the mind is the delightful thing and pleasurable thing. In other words, the 5 physical sense and 1 mental sense, the 6 senses. Okay. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and the mind. These 6 are called delightful things and pleasurable things. And then the Buddha went on to explain further, the form that you see with the eye is a delightful and pleasurable thing. The sound that you hear with your ear is a delightful thing, pleasurable thing. The smell and the taste and the touch and the thoughts are delightful things and pleasurable things. So if you look at it, first and foremost is the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. So these are the rupa, okay? Material thing, matter. It is internal. Internal means it consists in your body. Those 5 bases are internal. And then there's a form. Form is the material thing, but it is outside. Okay? And also sound is material, smell is material, taste is material, and the tangible touch is a material thing. But they are all external. And the thought is internal, the mind. And the object of the thoughts is the Dhamma objects. Dhamma objects is the outside. So in other words, they are all material things, okay, which is the 6 external and 6 internal. 5 are the physical source, 1 is the mental source. So those are called the bases, the 12 bases. You need the 12 bases. And when, let's say this external base, the form, comes in contact with the internal base, the eye or the retina, they come in contact. Okay. At that moment, a consciousness arises. At that moment, awareness arises. Awareness of the situation, awareness of the condition. And what is that awareness? That awareness is consciousness, vijnana. But as it is based on the sight, that consciousness is called seeing consciousness. So whenever the external base, which is rupa, and the internal base, also rupa, material, and the consciousness or the vijnana, 3 of them come in contact. Okay. At that moment, seeing consciousness arises. In other words, at that moment, seeing happens, but consciousness has the quality to be aware of it. So you need these five external bases and 5 internal bases, which are rupa, and the awareness through this source of seeing called seeing consciousness arises. And when these 3 come together at a moment, that coming together is called contact, mental contact. In Pali it's called phassa, mental contact. Whenever these 3 get together, when the condition is set for these 3 to be together, mental contact, phassa, is formed. So, just like the senses, when you are seeing consciousness arises, hearing consciousness arises, smelling consciousness arises, tasting consciousness arises, and touch consciousness arises, and also mind, the thought, Dhamma consciousness arises. So these consciousness are also delightful things and pleasurable things. 6 external material things are delightful and pleasurable things. 6 internal material things are delightful and pleasurable things. 6 types of consciousness based on these 6 senses are delightful and pleasurable things. Those are the delightful and pleasurable things, and that's how it is working. And whenever these 3 come in contact, that condition, that situation is called phassa, mental contact. And as soon as they come into contact, something happens. A feeling arises. Whenever you see something, you have a feeling about with regard to that whole situation. Whenever you hear something, you have a feeling for that hearing, feeling. They are quite precise. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. Whenever there's a contact, these feelings arises. These feelings, these vedana, are delightful things, pleasurable things. Contact, and then suddenly vedana, feelings. And then as soon as these 3 in contact, consciousness arises, and then there's a feeling, and at the same time, they all happen together, sahagata, together, they're arising together. At that time, consciously or knowingly or unconsciously, unknowingly, perception took place. In other words, you took a mark. You make certain marks, certain characteristics to store into your, so to speak, memory bank. So that when you see again, you remember. When you perceived it consciously, of course, it is quite clear, and you can define very clearly and sharply, because it's stored consciously. But some are stored unconsciously or subconsciously. Okay, to put in a different way, let's say sometime you see people, okay, something that you think you never have seen them, but you saw that face in the crowd, in a party, in a crowd. Oh, that face looks so familiar. I don't know where I've seen it. Automatically you recognize the face, but you cannot put pieces together. So familiar. I must have seen somewhere. That is perception and working, but that perception you perceived, you put it on a subconscious or unconscious level. And when things come in together, oh, that's where I've seen so-and-so introduced me at such a place, at such a time, or such a year, something come up. What it is, there are certain marks, you put it on something, consciously or unconsciously, so that you could cognize again when you see it. That's a perception. And these perceptions are also delightful things and pleasurable things. Now, it's in a step-by-step working process. The eye strike a form. At that moment, seeing consciousness arises. Getting the three together is called mental contact. Whenever there's a mental contact, feeling arises, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And at the same time, the mind is working to perceive that situation, that condition, that object. And then, at the same time, there's something is already in working. Every mental state, mental factors are doing their own job. They are doing their own job. Once you have that, after that, what happens is, simply put, it's called desire. Desire arises. Okay, but desire is a very broad word. So let's narrow it down. Okay. At that moment, volition arises. Volition is called cetana. That volition, cetana. Or another word for that volition is called will. A will arises. Okay. When all those things are in places, you have felt a certain feeling, you have already perceived in a certain way, at that moment you like to do something. You want to destroy it, you want to save it, you want to own it, you want to possess it. You want, or you don't want. You don't want is also a will. You want is also a will. That will or volition arises. That will or volition is the sankhara, khanda, mental formation. But that will plays the main role. That wills, okay, let's say, I want to go to the retreat. That's a will. And then you happen to enroll and you go to the retreat. I don't want to, okay, for whatever reason. Then you won't be enrolling into the retreat or attending the retreat. Simple as that. So that will is the trigger point. That will, that volition, accomplish its own purpose. Accomplish its own purpose. And also accomplish and promotes and push the purpose of other mental factors together with it. An example, there's a will already there under a situation. And under that situation, anger also arises. What does the will do? The will pushes the anger to raise more, and then pushes further to do something, to hurt something, to kill something, to beat something. It promotes, it encourages, it accomplishes the purpose of the another mental factor called anger. So that will plays a huge role in this stream of mental factors. Altogether there are 50 of them. But we will pick out this will or cetana or volition. And this will, or these group of mental factors led by the will, are also pleasurable things and delightful things, because it is making it happen as it desired or as it not desired. But both are desire. Not desiring is a desire. You want it that way. You want to happen this way, you want to happen that way, you want to go backward, you want to go forward. Regardless whether you put with negative or positive, they are all desire. They are all craving, they are all attachment. These are delightful things and pleasurable things. So, this is how delightful things and pleasurable things come to be and how it works. That is how it is working all the time, in every moment. Those things we are explaining, talking about is at work. Every moment it is at work. In every moment it is at work. It is working, working, working. They are working, they are operating, but we don't even know that they are working, they are operating. That will, that volition, is maintaining, promoting, making, forming a situation, a condition. That mental formations are all the time maintaining your mental state. That volition, will, and all the mental formations are creating a mental state, maintaining your personality, creating your personality. That is all the time, it's in work, it's in play, but we are not even aware of it. The same thing, rupa. We can say this or that, or healthy or not healthy, or have a fever or cold or whatever. The physical process by itself is also maintaining for that existence. It is always at work, intricate work, but we are not aware of it. We just take it as I. There are so many intricate physical processes are at work so that it could maintain this body, so that we are alive and so that we exist, holding on to this existence. And there's tons of maintenance work happening in your body, and also there are tons and tons of maintenance work in your mental states is happening so that it could maintain this mental existence, this personality, this me, this I. They are always at work. Sometimes they work smoothly, sometimes they become disbalanced. That's how depression comes in. That's how excitement comes in. That's how sickness comes in. That's how health comes in. But they are always working. These processes are working and working, working, and maintaining this body and maintaining this personality and the mind. And also creating a new condition, creating a new condition, creating a new condition, and adjusting to these new conditions. That is how it is really working. But we are totally oblivious to it. We are not aware of it. But that's how what the Buddha explained. This is how what is really happening. And of course, he just simply don't say it. He show us ways and means of to investigate into this matter. So that is that maintenance and creation of each to be adaptable to each and every condition is always at work. And in there the Buddha said, take craving into these delightful things and pleasurable things. And this craving, when it arises, and when it settles, it settles. That is how Buddha keep on explaining. What it means is, this craving here, all these delightful things. I think by now you can tell in a different way. These are the 5 aggregates. 5 aggregates, Binchak Khanda. 5 aggregates which are suffering. Craving into these 5 aggregates. Tanha, craving into these 5 aggregates, putting in a different context, different words. That's what is happening. So whenever it happens, what happens? Whenever a craving arises, how can the craving arises? We already explained this. External base, internal base, corresponding consciousness and feelings and perceptions and wills and all these whole 9 yards come into the intricate working relationship. And at that moment when it arises means when the craving arises, when all these things come in together, there's a craving or there's a desire or there's an attachment or grasping arises. And when it's settled, it's settled. And the way it is explained by the teachers of the teachers is, when it arises. The first time when that condition comes into being, a mental state arises. As an example, just to be more clear rather than dancing around with words, there's a situation happen which doesn't agree with you. At that moment, anger arises. Before, there's no anger to be found. But when a condition is come into being that is disagreeable condition, anger suddenly arises. That's what it means by craving. When it arises. Condition created, and the anger arises. Anger is also a craving. You crave for it. In other words, you willed it. You don't want it. That's a craving. Okay? So both in a negative and positive state falls under the word of desire and craving. Keep that in mind. So when it arises, suddenly, anger, nowhere to be found, suddenly pops up and anger arises. And when the anger arises, it then goes into, if it is quite intense, to transgressive state. You could actually do something, hurt something, harm something, kill something. That's called transgressive defilement. The other one was simply arising. The first moment it arises. And then the Buddha said, when it's settled, it's settled. It's also explained in a 2 different ways. One, it is when it's settled is this craving, not only the first moment it arises, it repeatedly arises. That's why it is lingering on, repeatedly arises. As an example, we understand 2 words, vitat and vichara, applied thoughts and sustained thought. Applied thought is just like, there's a bowl and we strike it with a stick. And the first moment it strikes, there's a sound come up. That sound is gross and inceptive. That is the applied thought. At the first moment of the strike, at the first moment of contact of all the things we talk about, the applied thought arises. And after that sustained thought, not in a meditation or mindfulness sense, simply the process. Sustained thought is the discursive thoughts. Discursive thoughts are thoughts related with lobha, doha, and moha. Sustained thought is just like after you strike the first bell, and then the sound keep on going, keep on ringing, the pressures keep on throwing, the sound keeps on going. That is a sustained thought, discursive thought. So when there's a thought, the first moment is the applied thought. The later moment which linger on is the sustained thought. The same thing, there's the craving arises, the first moment, and then it keep on pressing on and doing something. You enjoy something or you hate something. In that way one is explained. And also there's another way to understand it. Anger. When that mental state, when that anger, when that craving settle down, it disappears. Okay? When it settle, it disappears. What it means is, when it settle is these mental defilements, dislikes or dislike, anger or hatred or greed. They stay in a latent form. Nowhere do we found, nowhere do we detect it. In that latent form, it's called, when it settle. And when it arises, when the conditions come into being, it arises. And it repeatedly goes on and it settles back. And that's how the craving works. And that's how Buddha explained about craving. Okay. When the delightful things and pleasant things come into being and how it works. 6 external, 6 internal bases, 6 types of consciousness, and the mental contact, feeling, perception, and the will, and the mental formation. All these things are delightful things and pleasurable things. When these things come into being, the craving, the attachment comes in. And the way it arises and the way it settles, Buddha explained to us about it. Now, we can see the working model of about craving, the working model. We just see the word craving, attachment, or desire. The Buddha explained exactly how this is in actual operation, both in physical level and the mental level. That's how it works. Craving comes in, all these craving comes in, all the craving of the pleasurable senses, that is called Dhamma. And also we grasp and we get attached through the wrong view. And there's one more to explain. Because this second noble truth is a little more delicate and intricate to understand. Here, we just say, we saw an object, beautiful, desirable object, we crave for it. Okay. That's a craving, there's Dhamma. That craving is the cause of the suffering. In general, that's how it is. But at the same time, let's look at it in a different way. You see an object, you like it, you crave it. Okay. See an object, what is that? An object is the Rupa Khanda. Okay. And seeing consciousness is the Vijnana Khanda. And all the likes and stuff like that are called Vedana Khanda, and so on. All these khandas, the 5 aggregates. What are the 5 aggregates? The 5 aggregates are suffering, the first noble truth. So whatever we are experiencing at this particular moment, you see something and then there's a craving. That seeing, that craving is the first noble truth, not the second noble truth. Because it is the 5 aggregates. The first noble truth. Whatever it is happening in here right now is the first noble truth. That loving or craving for the beautiful car and craving for the beautiful song and craving for the beautiful scent, those are all what? The first noble truth. Very specific. They arise and they pass away. They arise and they pass away. Very specifically, you have specific event, specific conditions, specific object. And these pleasant things happen, you like it, you save it. Unpleasant things happen, you demolish it, you destroy it, you blocked it. Basically the place of the eyes, you do it. And then suddenly there's another craving. Not liking this car or this watch or this clothes or this person or that person. Just liking on all those things. Okay. Craving for all the comfortable things and craving not to have all the uncomfortable things. The craving of the craving. The general craving of the specific cravings. There are two cravings now. The first craving is the first noble truth. The second craving, general craving, that you become totally addicted to, you become habituated to. You just want in general the best and the greatest thing for yourself, and you don't want anything uncomfortable. That kind of general craving which is entirely with you all the time, with or without any objects. That is the second noble truth. The craving or the desire of the five aggregates. The first craving. The second craving over the first craving is the second noble truth. And Mahasi Sayar Myat explained in a different way so that we can understand a lot easier. All the incidents that we are having, all the delightful things that is happening in this life, all the cravings that we experience, all the attachment, all the grasping that we have that experience in this life is the first noble truth. And all the cravings and attachment and grasping we have formed in the past lives is the second noble truth. Because of that cravings of the past life, they become the cause, and the cravings of this current life, the present life, become the effect. So you can have a desire onto the desire. You can have a craving on the craving. One need to understand it very clearly. One type of craving is the first noble truth. In my words, very specific type of cravings are the first noble truth. And the second one, the general craving, wanting to be comfortable without any specific status or condition, just the insensate, inherent nature inside you, that craving is the second noble truth. And that is craving Dhamma. Because of craving for sense pleasure and the craving or attachment to the wrong view. The result or effect is suffering, dukkha. So that is the first noble truth and second noble truth. If you understand that way, you understand correctly what craving or Dhamma is. the second noble truth, the origin of suffering. May all of you be able to understand both theoretically, intellectually, and as well as experientially the noble truth of suffering and the origin of the noble truth of suffering clearly, and may you be abandon the second noble truth, which is craving, so that you would be able to relieve yourself from all form of suffering as soon as possible. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Buddham bhajami, Dhammam bhajami, Sangham bhajami.